prepared, because I'm not really going to, just do simple lecturing and end the class. I'm going to be asking questions all the time when I do lecture, and I will need you to give me some either educated guess or an idea, a thought, but it has to be something that comes from your reading of the material. So make sure you read it and you grasp it. And of course, you can ask me questions if you don't understand anything. But each chapter has a theme. Each chapter has main concepts that are very important for us to cover definitely on that specific week or a day. And I'm expecting, you to really come prepared, just reading and try to start to think about, what are we trying to accomplish here in terms of grasping the whole material, because your case analysis work, your company research reports, your presentations, they will rely on your understanding of the material we cover. And of course, your quiz performances as well, not your Globus quiz, but your quizzes in class. So make sure you understand fully. And let me know if you have any questions. If you don't want to speak up, you can write it in the chat. I also count that as participation. So, but I prefer if you speak at least, and if you can have the videos on, if your circumstances allow, I would appreciate all that. Okay? Yeah, your quizzes probably will be on the class time, usually, because the thing is, people have lots of other different arrangements at work or at school. So I will try to keep it with the class time, and we will decide on that together. So I won't be, creating something on my mind, a date or something, without asking you first. So I'm going to ask you, what's the best day to take the quiz one on those time intervals, and then uh, that's it. So for team ads, we need to talk. So let's spend some 5 to 10 minutes just in the end of this class to finalize the teams, because Deanna, if you take someone from another team, that team ends up with 3 or 2 individuals, okay? So either we're going to break up one team to help the other 3 teams who lost a member, or, we will have to think about it, because we don't want to create some unfair, environment where people feel, hey, people have 4 people in the team or 3 people and we have 2. So we shouldn't really have 2 people on any team. So we should have at least 3 people. And let's talk in the end, so that we decide for sure and we finalize the team. Okay, the teams. Perfect. Now let me share my screen. I want to go ahead and give you some introduction in terms of the strategic management and how it actually is important in terms of creating competitive advantages. And here, the importance of leadership comes into picture. Um, how much a leader do you think deserve? How much credit does a leader deserve? Do you think anybody wants to take a shot at this? It doesn't. There is no correct answer to this question, but I just want to know what you think about the leader's role in maintaining competitive or achieving sustainable competitive advantage.
I like to think of them as captain of the ship. So if you have a terrible captain, you're gonna sink. Yeah, they're the ones that are making all the high level decisions. So I do think they get a lot of credit.
Christopher, Christopher.
I think that depending on how the group performs, the leader should be responsible for if they do well, the leader should get some credit, but it also, if they do a bad job, the leader should also be blamed partially for that.
Diana.
I feel like the leader is indeed like a captain or something, but at the same time, he can't force the teammates to like perform the way he wants to perform himself. So although he is the one that's gonna be gathering the resources, you really can't force anyone to do the job. So I feel like when it comes to the blame, it should be like analyzed fairly.
Okay,
I think
Bar.
going off of, oops, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Just please make sure you raise the hand, Brianna, so that I will give you Bar and then Brianna, please.
So I think a leader's main role is to inspire the people under him in the organization so that he could just focus on his own personal job, but make the other people in the system function the best way they can do, and sort of being able to even take a step back. Like a good, very good leader can run a successful organization even when he's on vacation.
Mhm, mhm. And Brianna?
I was gonna respond kind of to what Diana said. And she was talking about how sometimes the leader shouldn't be blamed, like if the people under them don't perform up to par. And I do agree with that. I just feel like a leader would know when to like make a good decision to keep that person or not, whether or not they are performing, because I do feel it's a direct like representation of the leader.
Carlo, thank you.
Maybe a leader should be able to analyze the situation and be able to make critical decisions that would work best for the company and employees.
So decision making, right? So in any kind of company, we talk about the management role being planning, leading, organizing, and controlling. So leadership, of course, goes beyond that, goes beyond what we talk about planning or organizing or controlling, but leading people. And leadership is an art of influence. So it's an art of influencing others. But at the same time, your book talks about leadership in terms of both external control perspective and also romantic view. So external control usually says no matter what the leader does, the external forces really have their say in the organization's success, like economic downturns, like the COVID situation we have. And then the romantic view of leadership says a leader is the key force in the organization's success, like Steve Jobs. Okay, so here you see different perspectives of leadership as they relate to strategic management. And again, there is no right or wrong, but what we see with experience and with all the theories covered so far, leaders still have a lot to do with how the organization really kind of navigates in an uncharted territory or ambiguous environment or ambiguous future, because he or she usually is the one who inspires people, creates the vision, or at least participates in the vision or creation with the top management. So we see a lot of roles of leadership, and sometimes we see it when people leave, for example, an organization leadership role. For example, as I mentioned last time to you, Adam Newman left WeWork and the pandemic happened. So we see both external problem and a leader left. He was ousted by the top management. And WeWork, I don't know where it is right now, but I don't see it on top of the stock exchange lists anymore. Or I don't see it as like people are not talking about WeWork anymore. Although I think even with the pandemic, it could still provide some value to people because people are bored at home and people want space, people want office space, definitely. But again, that needs, leadership again, that needs that kind of power and, fire that, igniting the fire kind of thing. Like you need to be able to keep that vision alive as a leader so that the people are influenced by you and they are motivated by you, and the organization kind of takes shape. But again, there are also people who view this as very romantic and say leadership is overrated. With some industries, definitely, if you are too automated, if you're like top of your game in terms of machine learning, or let's say your innovation is like off the charts. So again, leaders still important. Like what happened to Robin Hood, the leaders were thinking this was going to democratize the free trade environment, and that something happened and it kind of uh, tarnished their reputation. But here again, to turn things around, you still need leadership. So leadership is actually twofold. Yes, it doesn't create everything and anything and everything in an organization and beyond, but at the same time, it could be a turnaround process in the organizations when you think about different types of leadership. Okay, so again, like they can make a difference. They could be proactive. They can refine strategies. They can be aware of opportunities and threats. They can understand fully the firm's resources and capabilities and make strategic management both a process and a way of thinking throughout the organization. Okay, so we still think like that. And defining strategic management, well, you will be working on strategic management in three pillars. First, you will understand how analysis could be made. So our first weeks are going to be around analysis components. What analysis? Internal and external environment. So we're going to spend a good deal of time how to do internal analysis, how to do external analysis, and how to scan the environment for forces. Decisions, formulation part. What industries should we compete in? How should we compete in those industries if you choose one or two? Actions, implementation of strategy. So what kind of resources should we be allocating? And how could we design the organization so that you bring intended strategies to reality? Here, I have a question for you. That's an intriguing question, I hope. So from your experience so far, or from what you read so far, do you think, how do you think the relationship between structure and strategy works? How do you think the organizational structure, I mean, the people who make the organization, people who are designing it, have an influence over strategy versus strategy influencing all of that? How do you see that relationship? Anybody wants to give their 2 cents to this? Steffi?
Hey, hello, Professor. I was thinking in terms of strategy management. I guess we would refer to like a playbook because managers usually have like a certain way they want to go about executing tasks in order to accomplish them with, I guess, the most efficiency using the least amount of resources that they have available, in order to conserve company expenditure. Not in terms of just monetary, but in terms of, I guess, human, I guess, people as in labor force, and also other resources that might not necessarily be required to do certain tasks. And I feel like some I guess leaders should understand that certain people, although they've been assigned a task, may not be good at that. And I think leaders should be able to understand who's good at which task in order to appropriately assign everyone a task, which would lead in the end result of the work being finished and not being, I guess, semi-completed. Because some people do love to, like, get involved, but some people are just better at other tasks than some people are. So knowing who's better at what and who can get what done in, I guess, with 90% or at least the best efficiency would be, I guess, a strategy to start with.
So here, from what you said, the strategy, although it could be very much intact and fully, defined, if you don't have the people who execute that strategy or who don't know how to really put it in play, that would be just in a written, material. It could be just on text, but it doesn't really come to life. So you
No, not
need
really.
people. Yeah. So you
Yeah.
need people to execute that. You need people to implement the strategies. And sometimes, what we observe is structure also influences strategy. Like the way you appoint some people to some roles versus some others would be working to your detriment as an organization, or would really lead you to, prosper from all the things. You would thrive because these people really create, a certain environment and a certain way of doing things that takes the organization to another level. You leapfrog the competitors suddenly. And here the structure is important, is phenomenal. And in the past, it was always the understanding that strategy always leads structure, but structure also has an influence over strategy. If it's, again, if you have the wrong people, if you're designed, not designed appropriately, I mean, in line with the strategic goals, okay? Let's say you are an innovative company and you're running a bureaucratic organization and people leave you because you're an innovative company that requires a certain working environment where people need more freedom than ever, right? So the way your work environment works, the way you give freedom, allow freedom to people versus the way you control processes, they all differ. It also differs depending on the age of the company. Like as you age, you need to let them have more control in what they do versus in the beginning, maybe you need to be able to know where it's headed. You need to be able to, although you lead people in terms of their freedom, but at the same time, the younger the company is, the more controls in certain processes you need to take into consideration. So structure is still very important. And again, it could be, influencing strategy as well. There is a question that you asked, Jahid, can you give an example of external forces, how that relates to it? We will talk about external forces in our next, class, but there are 5 external forces that we will study. And leadership influences all of them in different ways. We have buyer power, we have supplier power, we have new entrants, substitutes, competitors. And in each force, like let's say new entrants, if you have an industry where it's easy to enter, okay, there are not much high entry barriers in an industry that you operate, your leadership needs to think about potential threats before they happen. So it has a proactive function of leadership. Whereas, let's say your customer is demanding more in time and you predict your customers are demanding more, you see that as a leader, you need to create certain marketing and product-based or service-based strategies so that the customers feel satisfied. So again, depending on a force, a leader makes certain decisions, and those decisions are related to always to your strategies. Okay? So we'll talk about that as we go, as we approach. How should we compete in order to create a competitive advantage in the marketplace? Those are 2 fundamental questions. How can we create competitive advantages in the marketplace that are unique, valuable, and difficult for rivals to copy and substitute? And it's argued that operational effectiveness is not enough to sustain a competitive advantage. Does anybody want to weigh in what we mean by operational effectiveness, why it may not be enough, not sufficient criteria to be successful on the longer term? Brianna and then Steffi, and I'm looking for more people, please, to join us. That's a great discussion. Brianna.
So what I get from that, Sim, is that the operation aspect, like, so say maybe it was like a fast food chain, like they're able to get you like your product out quickly to you and take their order quickly and your money, and like all of that happens very quickly and you get your food and you're on your way. But if the product itself is not something that is drawing you back, you're not going to continue to spend your money there no matter how good the operations are run. So that's what, yeah.
Is somebody playing with the screen? I've seen some scratches. Anyway, it's gone. That's great. Okay. Okay, yes, Brianna. So those are really valuable inputs here. And effectiveness sometimes, and anybody who wants to please participate, please do. That's a good point. And effectiveness usually is a given. Any company who wants to compete effectively needs to be operationally effective already. But why it's not necessary, it's not sufficient, but a necessary component of having a sustainable competitive advantage is a different story. What the companies need to do to be different in the market, to be able to beat the competitors in the way that they should be beating them, or they should be still be valuable in the eye of the customers. So these are important and valuable points. And Jarna, please.
Yeah, in order to be operationally effective, I think that they need to be able to improve their quality, their productivity, stand out in terms of uniqueness, because if you have a better product, but the delivery time is taking forever, well, that may not be worth it to me anymore if I need that product now, or vice versa. If the company can deliver it to me extremely fast, but it's falling apart within the first couple of uses, I'm not going to go back to them again. So they sort of have to be productive and timely and maximize their procedures, I think, in terms to be like productive.
Yes, yes. But at the same time, there are a couple of things we need to consider in addition to operational effectiveness. So that's why this course is very important for you, because when we think about key attributes of strategic management, you talk about directing the organization towards overall goals and objectives, including multiple stakeholders, not one. You need to incorporate both the short and the long-term perspectives, and you recognize trade-offs between efficiency and effectiveness. Anybody who wants to tell me the difference between, and I think we went over this last time or may not, I might be confusing between the two courses that I teach, but just quickly, what's efficiency and what's effectiveness? What's the difference between the two? Brianna, I see your hand up.
No, I think that was from the last question.
Okay,
so-
from the last one. Okay.
Mhm.
Anybody wants to tell me the difference between effectiveness and efficiency? Okay, Jarna?
Efficiency is the ability to accomplish something, whereas effectiveness is like sort of the degree of success.
Mhm. Okay, and Nafil?
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. Basically, it's to accomplish something with like the least amount of wasted time, effort, or money. And effectiveness is basically something that's successful to get the result that you want.
Right. Jason?
I was going to say basically the same thing. You put in less, the less you can put in for something, like the more efficient it is. But effectiveness is basically a measure of success for that something.
Yeah, I mean, you can, be an effective tennis player, right? When you do the tennis, you have a score, and when you do a score, it's a score. So you beat with your scores the other party. But then, how efficient you get the score? In how many minutes? How long does it take to get the best shot at tennis player, as a tennis player, or as a basketball player? How long does it take you to have that, wonderful shot? Or how much effort do you spend in getting that score versus getting the score, right? So a lot of times, a lot of sources talk about this trade-off between efficiency and effectiveness, because sometimes for the sake of efficiency, you might be losing effectiveness, or for the sake of effectiveness, you might be losing efficiency. So it's a matter of balancing the two, try to be doing them in an optimum level so that you lose less time, less energy, less effort possible, and you still get the result compared to other people in the industry. And again, strategic management is also about this. How can we be more efficient, but not losing sight of effectiveness? And how can we be effective by not, losing sight of efficiency? So these are the things you're going to be coming across a lot during this term. And you are going to be seeing some companies from these angles. And I'm just giving you some keywords here. These, we're going to go over them more and more each time. So don't worry if you don't understand or if you don't have a fully grasp of these in the first round. I will be giving you more examples, more explanations as we, go along, because we have a lot of time to discuss these. But at least these are some of the key terms that we will use all throughout the term, including our strategic case analysis. Okay. And what does ambidextrous mean? What is being ambidextrous? What do we mean by managers need to be ambidextrous? Kevin?
I think if I remember it correctly, you have to balance short-term goals and long-term goals. I think that's
Yes. 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 Jahid?
how flexible you are and how good are you are at adapting.
Perfect. Mariah?
I was going to say a little bit of the same thing, and also that managers need to be able to look at the perspectives of kind of both sides of the situation that they're approaching.
Michael?
Yeah, I was gonna say like balance both the long and short term goals and what has to get done in order to be effective.
Thank you. What example can you give to this? I mean to class. I'm asking this to class. Kevin?
Yeah, so public CEOs, they have to balance short-term quarters. So when they release quarterly earnings, they want to make sure that they are performing their highest earnings, but they also want to invest in the future for future earnings. So it's a preservation of capital versus future profits.
Guys, why do we need to think about the long term? Jahid? Was it from your earlier?
Yeah, this was from my last question.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. Let me rephrase this question then. What might happen along the way so that I should be preparing for some other goals apart from what I'm doing right now? What might happen, what may not happen? Diana and then Christopher?
Well, along the way, your like initial goals and maybe plans may go wrong, so you should be prepared for like long-term consequences or like maybe potential wins long-term.
And Christopher?
Sometimes some business if you don't plan for long term, sometimes certain business opportunities only like require lots of planning. So like let's say you want to be a partner with a certain business, you have to plan the long term to like get to like buy their shares or like to be a partner with them.
Carlo?
So the business environment might change in the future. So you might get more competitors coming in or different products launch on the market. So you have to be able to adapt to those changes in the future.
Gabriela?
I was basically going to say everything along the lines of a lot of like the external factors. They're going to change as the years go on, and you're going to experience different economic like points, or even like now with COVID, you have to kind of prepare for the long-term goals of your company and organization in order to be prepared for whatever's going to come.
Jahid? Thank you.
I was going to say what I think Gabriella just said.
Okay, so let's think about like things that happen along the way, and things move very fast, and things as drastic as this COVID happened. And think about, and maybe we will do a little breakout today if time allows. I want you to discuss this among yourselves, like why is Zoom could still be preferred over, let's say, Microsoft Teams or WebEx applications, which have been there all along. And Zoom was just, a startup. And then the COVID happened, and Zoom is one of the, most sought after companies in terms of stocks, in terms of usage quality, in terms of user friendliness. So, and this is maybe easy for startups. And why can't some giant companies be ambidextrous? So they lose it to startups sometimes, right? Like, for example, Pfizer has to, acquire the solution by BioNTech, if you follow the news, like the German startup company who did the COVID vaccine. They were already working on the mRNA applications, but then their solution immediately was transferable to the COVID resolution, so they could build the vaccine compared to all these giant medical companies. Like, We have Novartis, we have AstraZeneca, we have Johnson and Johnson, we have universities of medical departments. So we have giants of medical institutions. But then the first company that comes along, which is a startup, which is limited resources compared to the others, but it built the solution. So some companies find the solution to acquire those companies, and we will look at that as a strategy. But what's not happening in a giant company, like we saw as examples of Sears, Toys R Us, Blockbuster, BlackBerry in the old times. So what can't they do and they lose it, although they have all the resources and everything? Okay, let me see. I want to see some different people too, guys. I mean, you don't have to give me there is no absolute correct answer, so don't hesitate. Diana?
I was thinking the difference between like a big major company compared to like a smaller startup is the fact that the big major companies, they already have a reputation for certain goods and like services they provide, like Microsoft, for example. I personally didn't know about Microsoft Teams until like way after Zoom. And Zoom, on the other hand, is like a company that I know that specializes in like virtual meetings that most of like schools and like companies utilize for like meetings. So that's why they're more successful as compared to like bigger companies, just because of this image they already have before this new product, I'd say.
Okay, okay. Again, why couldn't Microsoft be the first one in this one? Andrew? Yeah, well, maybe Microsoft couldn't do that, but some other companies can still do that, right? So it's not if a faith-based this is what they should do. They never have these resources. It's because they are not ambidextrous enough. It's because they don't see the opportunity in a related line of business so that they allocate more resources to that, or they create a separate innovation department. And Microsoft is not bad in this one, but there are many others who lose that kind of dexterity, in the on being ambidextrous, especially on the left hand or whatever the non-dominant hand might be for them. Their dominant hand mainly is, let's say, the right hand, but because they've never signed their name even on the left hand, when let's say they crack their right hand, something happens, it's broken, they are left empty-handed because they don't know how to use their left hand. They never tried, they never practiced with it. I'm telling you this because ambidexterity means you need to focus both short and the long-term goals, and you need to be able to allocate enough resources, good enough resources to your long-term goals as well. Okay, because markets are changing really fast and new challenges are on the way. And we already know some industries will be more prominent than others in few years to come. So that means there are some givens that we know. So we need to prepare for that. But again, we shouldn't lose sight of our short-term goals because that's where our money comes in. That's where the blood comes into the company. So the cash flow is very important, but you are solely focused on your current cash flow and don't consider the future planning. What might be coming, given what's happening today, you might lose it sometimes tragically. So that's why this is very important. Okay, so ambidexterity is both short and the long term. Sometimes the business environment is again, far from being predictable, and there are intended strategies versus realized strategies. You might start out with a certain strategy in mind, but then something happens, like COVID, like what happened to Robinhood lately, right? We will discuss that if you want. So something happens along the way. Some people, a bunch of, you could say maybe crazy or very intelligent people, they came together through Reddit and they bought this stock of GameStop, which was a losing company in terms of value. And then this led to some kind of, a volatile movement in the stock exchange market, which, Robinhood was a big player of, right? So, I mean, intended strategy was something different. They would continue trying to democratize the free trade, but then the realized strategy has to be what? Let's say you're Robinhood, and let's say this happened to you. And let's say people are looking for alternative stock exchange places because they start to lose trust of what Robinhood has, because it kind of had, intervened with the buying and selling options of people, at least for a while, and that kind of, diminished their, starting strategy. It diminished their reputation, it diminished what they stood for. So again, intended strategies could be different from realized strategies. And because the business environment, like even today, like we see it so fast, it's so vast amount of change that is far from being predictable. That's why you need to be able to pivot, which means change the direction if and when necessary. Okay. Okay, so when we, like, let's say, oversee the whole term with the strategic management processes, we are starting to look at introduction of analyzing goals and objectives of the company. In the second chapter, we will be analyzing the external environment, okay, the forces, those forces, namely the buyer's power, the substitutes, the suppliers, the new entrants, and the rivalry. And then chapter 3, analyzing the internal environment of the company. Chapter 4, assessing intellectual capital. Chapter 5, formulating business level strategies. Chapter 6, formulating corporate level strategies. Chapter 7, formulating international strategies. We will have to skip chapter 8, but if we have time, I will mention it in the end. That's entrepreneurial strategy. And then about the implementation phase, we will look at chapter 9, strategic control and governance, chapter 10, designs, chapter 11, leadership, ethics, and all that. Chapter 12, again, fostering entrepreneurship. But, we won't be able to cover much about entrepreneurship, although I usually promise my students, because this, syllabus is kind of pre-structured, because this is actually standard given to all sections of Baruch students in the 4th year. I can't do major changes. Only what I could do is I can spend some time. If our time remains, I will spend some time on entrepreneurship, okay? And I want to, since I already have a lot of experience myself, and also it's a new era. There are so many small businesses in this country, 90% small businesses, and each time a new startup emerges and they bring a new challenge to the industries. So we will talk about, my intent is to talk about it, but again, it depends on how our time might be to go deeper enough into that chapter, because it's not covered in our pre-structured syllabus, okay? But I'll do my best, so you know. So this is like an overview of what we will cover. And the analysis, as I said, is the starting point in the strategic management process. And the analysis, and some of my students actually in my earlier courses, they were not really paying attention to analysis enough. So their recommendations would be kind of lacking a solid base. So in your case analysis, guys, in everything that you analyze, in your company research reports, you need to be doing this step really carefully. You need to analyze the environment with all of its external forces components, with all of its value chain, internal environment, and the SWOTs, everything that you could be doing in relation to the analysis should be done. Because unless you do the analysis in a kind of good way, the second step suffers. Okay, you need to look at, as I said, like hierarchy, of course, starting with mission, vision of the organization, and strategic objectives. And then there is a general environment and then the industry environment. General environment usually talks about things like demographic factors, geographic factors, political factors, economic factors. Industry environment is most related to competitors, new entrants, suppliers, and all these. But you need to be able to, when you do the analysis, you need to be able to scan the environment to possibly detect and understand what are these forces, okay? Internal environment relates to your strengths and weaknesses and the relationship between the activities on the value chain. And we're going to go more into what value chain might be. But for now, suffice it to say, value chain is, let's say you are producer of shoes, like your Nike, you are starting with a raw material where you produce in Taiwan, let's say. In Taiwan, you bring the raw material in for shoes, and then you bring it to the factory, they make the shoes, or you automatize the process, and then you have beginning, you have the outbound logistics where you carry the raw material from place to place, and then inbound, I'm sorry, and then you have outbound logistics where you carry the end product to certain distributors. And from those distributors, you go into the hands of the customer or to the retailers or to online marketplace. But these are all part of your value chain. And without a good understanding of the value chain and its interlocking activities, you cannot do a good analysis of the internal environment, okay? Because some firms do a great job of managing their internal environment and some firms cannot, okay? Customer service is one of them. You might be liking one company, their products so well, but then when it comes to their customer service, it suffers. So you hate the company because the customer service is so bad. And then intellectual assets of the firm, especially innovation companies, the knowledge workers, other intellectual assets, networks, relationships, all the things that you could consider as intellectual assets includes your formulas, includes your secret ingredients in everything, like Kentucky Fried Chicken. Nobody knows how it's being made still. Do you know what are the exact ingredients they put into Kentucky Fried Chicken? No, right? But then you don't know it. It's part of the intellectual assets, and it's also part of your value chain because it adds a lot of complexity to what you do and what you offer. Okay, before I go to formulation, let me see some comments on the chat. It's chapter 1. Okay, Steffi, yes. Able to make decisions quickly with the startups have that flexibility, definitely. Yes, definitely. So yes, the startups have that. But at the same time, think about the products that they offer. Do you think, like, you don't have to answer this. I'm just giving you a food for thought. So do you think these companies like Blockbuster didn't have the money to do something that Netflix does? They had the money. They had the resources. I'm sure they had engineers.
I believe what they lacked was, I guess, a creative team or someone with an idea, because usually it's the people with the ideas that are recruited by the individuals with the resources, assets, and connections because they see an opportunity to, I guess, improve the idea and market it, and eventually they profit off of that.
Exactly. And it's interesting, like a giant like a Sears, right? Sears is a giant. Why couldn't they be Sears.com, for heaven's sakes, for God's sake? Why couldn't they be Sears.com? I mean, they had everything. They had everything. I'm sure they had a lot of profit. And they have a wonderful brand reputation as well. So they start the war with probably 10 plus, like against those startups who start from zero. Like they already have 10. They bankrupted because they weren't able to catch the wave. of e-commerce. It's not because they didn't have the resources. It's what Steffi mentioned. They lack that ambidexterity, right? So, which means they lack the creativity. They lacked, somebody or some people telling them, hey, this is going this direction. We need to start investing into that direction at some level. So nobody said that, it looks like. And so the company ended up bankruptcy. And the same thing with Toys R Us, the same thing with BlackBerry in the time. BlackBerry was the first smartphone that everybody used. It was a handheld device. It was wonderful. But then, it couldn't bring digitalization enough to its components. And that's how iPhone and Samsung and others really boomed. And what I'm saying is that these companies didn't necessarily lack resources or capital or mindset. Maybe mindset, yes, but not the other things. Luan, please.
When it came to companies like Blockbuster, and even now that you mentioned BlackBerry, I figure maybe that their reputation for being kind of like one of the pillars of that industry kind of forces them to almost like, it almost becomes a crutch in like a shifting environment. They almost want to like be the last ones, not the last ones to go out, but almost inevitably being the last like big boys of the block of something like VHS tapes and like sidekicks and Blackberries for that sense. Yeah, that inability to almost shift over to a changing market, almost like that reputation for having that like 10 plus head start almost is exactly the amount that like shoots them in the foot.
And Jocelyn says, doesn't JC Penney have an online store as well, but are also going bankrupt? Is it mostly due to the rise of online retail? Well, something that they couldn't do that others do, like Shopify, boomed in the summer. And we didn't know Shopify for a long time, right? It's fairly new. So there are things that they do that kind of something that catches, that's coming, and they tap into that future demand somehow, and they start investing it, and they start to win the game. That's how it is. And those are all those are all strategies, my students. Those are all strategies. People bring strategies. Unless they bring those strategies into the picture, nothing happens. And it's all the mistakes starting from the top. So the strategy always has to be renewed, reconsidered, analyzed, formulated all the time. Okay, that's what we mean. That's what we mean by strategies. Okay, so let me continue with this discussion, because I think this is very important. So strategy formulation is usually developed at several levels. So you can develop a formulation based on business level or corporate level and international level and entrepreneurial levels. Business level, again, meaning how to compete in a given business to attain competitive advantage. So in a given business. Corporate level means what businesses to compete in, especially when you have more than one business underneath your corporations. How can you bring them together, although they might be related or unrelated, like Johnson & Johnson case or P&G case? You have different lines of business, or Berkshire Hathaway, right? You have different businesses under you, but you can still manage them together to share resources, to share things in the value chain, and they still will create synergy. What does synergy mean? Anybody knows what it means? Yes, it's an ability. If you want to create a formula, what would that mean, for example, guys? Synergy is what? Let's say I come with you, I come together with you, and we create a synergy. What does that mean?
If I may take this one.
Sure, please. And then Diana.
Define synergy. I guess you would put it in such a way that if, let's say, you have two companies or two or more companies, and they together their combined effect results in a greater result than if they were to operate separately.
Perfect. Perfect. It's like 1 + 1 = 3, not 2. Diana?
I was just thinking of connectivity, like how connected everyone is and how well they all work together.
Yes, yes. It also translates into working together, but at the same time, as Steffi mentioned, you come together, you create a value, but what you create would be even more if you like worked like separately and would produce outcomes individually. It wouldn't be as much as the one you would create together. Okay, this is what I mean. It's more than individual collection of individual efforts. It's something more than that. Jahid?
I would say it's not only working together, but working in the part that you know how to do best.
Okay, of course, it ties into that too as well. But synergy as a term, I want you to really understand this in this class because we will talk about synergy a lot. Synergy is mainly creating a kind of different value, a kind of remarkable value, uh, which otherwise you wouldn't be creating alone as a sum of your like each individual companies, let's say, or business units. Uh, International strategies. So we also talk about in the formulation what strategies are needed as the business ventures beyond its national boundaries. What businesses should be going? What are some of the entry points we need to use? Should we just do exports? Should we be using global strategies? Should we be using multi-domestic or transnational? We will cover these as we go into the related course, related week. And entrepreneurial initiatives, how can businesses create new value? How can new businesses create new value? And still, these are part of formulation strategies that we will go over. Okay. And when we formulate business level strategies, guys, and in the related chapter, you will see there are some main business level strategies that you will witness. One of them is cost leadership. The other one is differentiation. And the other one is a focus, which means focusing a narrow or industry-wide market segment. Does anybody want to take a shot at what cost leadership might be? I know this is not the chapter yet, but maybe you have an idea what cost leadership might mean. Diana?
If I were to guess, it probably has to do with the like being a leader in the cost, like providing the most I don't know, good prices. That's how I would take it.
So your product should be, okay, I have some other people before I say, okay, I see the same people all the time, guys. I want lots of people coming. Please, I mean, I never, criticize or never judge anybody because of a particular response that they give. So please, don't be shy and just step forward. So Steffi, Jahid, I'm sorry, I'm gonna let Nafil talk this time.
Hey, so cost leadership is basically like when a company projects itself to make is the basically the cheapest manufacturer for a particular product is basically like having like the competitive advantage by having the lowest cost of operation in the industry.
Okay, so it's kind of close. Steffi?
Sorry, I have like a little issue there. Um, I would say that I guess cost leadership would involve establishing some sort of competitive advantage by being the I guess the company that's in the industry with the lowest cost of operation. So the cost leadership is usually driven by, I guess, company efficiency, size, scale, and stuff like that. And when it comes to cost leadership, if you can be the one in the industry with the lowest cost and still produce a product that's able to compete with other companies who are, I guess, on a higher tier, then I think you're doing pretty well.
Okay, and Jahid, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing.
Okay, thank you, Jahid. So we will look into this. And cost leadership is mainly, it may or may not result from your cost-effective production lines. That's the first thing I want to say, but in response to what you just said. So the reasons might vary from your logistics to production to your marketing, whatever. The important thing with cost leadership strategy is just this one thing. As a product or service, you are on par, like similar with many other competitors out there, but you are competing based on the cost you provide for the customers. So for the customers, you are not trying to be the best product out there. You are good enough. Your product is good enough, but what you compete with others is through your cost leadership, which means your cost offerings, the way you are cheaper compared to others which offer similar products. Okay. Differentiation. What do you mean by differentiation? Anybody wants to say something for that? And please, some different individuals, please. I have the same individuals always, same students. Thank you so much. But I really want to see some also different. Mahmouda, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you raise your hand or no?
I could go if
Maybe
you
not.
want me to.
Yeah, please do. Mahmouda, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think it means how you stand out compared to your competitors.
Okay, how you stand out? Yes, sort of. And in what ways, Gabriela?
It's kind of like your unique niche of your product and how it's different from the other competitors, how it makes it better, why people would want to buy your product versus the competitor's product. It's kind of determines where you stand in the market.
Perfect. Gabe?
Yeah, I was going to say something similar, but another example of differentiation can be like a customer experience or a brand that allows or makes the customer feel different than, if they were to, let's say, go to one of your competitors.
Perfect. So again, money-wise, price-wise, you are similar, but you are making a difference towards your differentiation, towards the product quality, towards the product uniqueness, towards the product originality. But you are not necessarily too expensive. But how you compete is through your offer, which is very original and unique compared to others. Okay. So another one is the focusing on a narrow industrial market segment. Here, whatever your product or price might be, the difference is through targeting a focused customer segment. Let's say I am Ferrari. Okay, I have differentiation, but at the same time, I am focusing on a high luxury segment, market demand, and I'm targeting people having incomes over $5 million a year. Okay, that's my focused narrow segment. Or I'm Louis Vuitton. I am focusing on, the target segment, which is looking for handmade, and which, have a good, really high disposable income, and who are like brand sensitive. So, in this one, you can use any strategy as long as you are focused on a specific target segment. But again, I don't want to go too deep dive into these because we will have a separate class where we talk about business level, corporate level strategies. But for the time being, I just wanted to, ask you so that you start to think about it. Corporate level strategies, that's the portfolio of businesses. That I gave example for you. P&G, Johnson & Johnson, Berkshire Hathaway, they have different businesses that they are managing at the same time. They have insurance, they have healthcare, they have finance, they have, hotel chain. So they have different business lines, they have real estate, and they still manage to keep them profitable in the different industries that they compete in, and they create synergies amongst these different businesses. And we're going to look at how do they create synergies in a great deal when we come to discussing about these types of strategies. Okay, any questions? I'm going to look into chat very shortly. Just stick with it. Formulating international strategies. For the international, the main issue is what's the appropriate entry into a geography location? Should we not invest in that country in the beginning, and should we just send my products over and see what happens, just test the market by just exporting? That's the least risky option, for example. Or should we go in and create, build a plant in that specific country, start to produce in there, use related marketing strategies that are targeted at that specific culture, and investing more and start to be their local brand. So these are all international strategies that you could deploy as a company. And again, the same question applies. How do we go about attaining those advantages in international markets? Okay. And as entrepreneurial strategy, how do we recognize viable opportunities and how do you formulate effective strategies? So as an entrepreneur, where do I see the opportunity lies? Obviously, Zoom was very clever. Well, he was working for WebEx before. Eric Wan, originally Chinese, he was working for WebEx, and he told WebEx actually, why don't we create something like this? And WebEx said, no, we don't have time for that yet. He wanted to create a simpler tool for online conferencing. And he said, okay, you don't, approve my idea, then I'm going to start my own business. That's how it all started. And WebEx did not consider this ambidextrous opportunity by Eric, who was just an employee in WebEx, right? So, I mean, you might say, what's the difference between WebEx and Zoom? Well, obviously, there's a difference, and people choose Zoom over WebEx. Partly because it's free for many people, it's very user-friendly, it doesn't require license and other probably details. I'm not a WebEx user, so I can't tell you the details and specifics of the product differences, but obviously, Zoom has been really easy for people to use for a larger population, and he turned to be right. So again, these are the entrepreneurial things, and it's important to see the future and what's coming when you try to chase some opportunities. Any questions? Okay. Is joint venture part of corporate strategy? Yes, Tenzin, it's a part of corporate strategies, definitely. Steffi and Gabe, did you have something to say?
Sorry, that was from before.
Yeah,
Okay.
the hand up was just floating from before.
Okay, guys. Okay, I want to finalize, and then maybe on Thursday we'll do more breakout discussions. I'll try to plan for that. But for the time being, let me finalize my, final thoughts on the strategy and why it's important. So implementation is mainly the taking action portion. You are ensuring control system, you're creating effective organizational design appropriate with the strategies, you coordinate activities with your stakeholders, including your suppliers, customers, partners. And your leadership ensures there's commitment for excellence and ethical behavior. You promote learning and continuous improvement and act entrepreneurially in creating new opportunities. So your strategy implementation takes into account your organizational design, your people, the way they do things, your rules and procedures, the way you create norms inside the organization, your organizational culture, your leadership and ethics, okay? And in our course, we're going to tap into each of these three pillars: strategy analysis, formulation, and implementation, okay? So that's an important part of it. We're going to be talking things like, corporate governance, strategic control, informational control. We're going to go into that later on, so I don't need to go deep dive now. Behavioral controls, rewards and incentives, effective corporate governance through people who lead the company, some ethical practices and unethical practices of the top management, the C-suite, we mean the CEOs, CXOs, CMOs, CTOs, the people who are on the top, and their behaviors and how they govern the corporate according to these effective guidelines. As I mentioned, structures consistent with strategy, organizational boundaries must be flexible and permeable, and strategic alliances must capitalize on the capabilities of other organizations. Let's say you create a strategic alliance with some other organization because you want some solutions sooner in the market before you try to develop it yourself. You need to make sure the capabilities of the other organization that you ally with are meeting the standards of what you want to create. Creating a learning organization by being effective leaders in benefiting from your people, your talents, people who are talented enough, people who have this creativity enough, so that you benefit from their capabilities. And then corporate entrepreneurship, sometimes we call it intrapreneurship. That's an entrepreneurship inside the company. You always and consistently find new ways to renew yourselves, to find new opportunities which enhance your firm's innovative capacity. Okay, so this is a given. This has to be there. Given this rapid change in the environment with the technology, the corporations are faced with even more challenges than ever, because somebody out there is already creating certain solutions which lead us which lead us as consumers or customers to spend less time, less money, less effort in using the products. Okay, so that's why entrepreneurship should be an ongoing pursuit of in any organization, and they should be on the lookout for new talents, new innovations all the time, at all times. Okay. And the corporate governance includes the C-suite, the shareholders, the board of directors, and yes, they are important in making day-to-day making these strategic decisions as well as day-to-day operations, and making sure they run effectively all throughout the organization. Okay, what do we mean by zero sum versus symbiosis? Anybody knows what zero sum means? Andrew and Kevin. Exactly. There's absolutely a winner and a loser. And yeah, Andrew, you lowered your hand, I guess. Okay. Yes, definitely. I mean, whenever you play a game, there is a winner and a loser. But there is a symbiosis perspective now, which means what? What is symbiosis? Andrew?
Your mic
Andrew?
is muted.
Kind of like synergy, and kind of like, we can create solutions and working environments where it doesn't have to be a winner and a loser, but it could be designed in such a way that we both could be winners. Sometimes there's this perspective where we call value net, and I will explain that more in coming chapters. Value net is a term usually coined by Porter. He says it doesn't matter if we have a lot of competitors in the industry, as long as we are creating non-zero game rules, like everybody is destined to win and not lose, we can have as many competitors as we want. the way we tap into different needs of our clients is very important. That's how sometimes you could see it. HBO Max versus Netflix or versus Disney Plus, right? Or versus Hulu channel. These are still winners. And Amazon, like, the Amazon Prime, they have a streaming too. So they don't necessarily lose to one another. They might have different styles, they might have different offerings in terms of movie options and things like that, but that's what Porter means. If there are specific needs of the customer that we could each tap into differently, we could still gain market share, and we don't necessarily have to have to beat somebody altogether or completely erase it from the industry, because we will be tapping into different needs. Okay, let me see. I'll explain this some more. And of course, we're going to talk about things like social responsibility, triple bottom line, and others. And here you see the hierarchy of goals with vision, mission, and strategic objectives, and the importance of all that. So anyway, guys, that's a snapshot of what strategic management might mean for the businesses, for the industries, for the competitors, and how they don't have to really be in a win-lose, fierce win-lose game, but there are some alternatives. And we're going to look at, I hope to show you the movie, a little short game, Prisoner's Dilemma. I don't know if you've seen it before. We will see a short video on the YouTube on the Prisoner's Dilemma on our next class, and I will explain it to you more. So before I go, yes. Could we what? Yes, we already have the groups actually, but we just need to make sure we are on the right track. So Jahan, Gabriela, and Jocelyn are team one. Is that confirmed?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. We lost Natalia, so we have Diana, Tomoyuki, and Jennifer, number 2.
Yeah.
Jarna, Sol, Luan, and Michael, number 3.
Yes.
And then Isaiah, Anthony, Kevin, and Steffi, number 4.
Check.
Yeah, we're good. Just need to
Yes.
get in touch with Isaiah to add him to our group.
You weren't in touch? He still seems to be on the list in the school, so he didn't seem to drop. But let me know if you still didn't hear
He's like
from
right there
him.
in the group chat.
He is? Wait, we're missing somebody, right? I thought we were missing somebody.
No, not in
Okay.
our group chat, in the class, in the Zoom chat.
Okay, yeah, he wrote it. Isaiah, people are not reaching out to you, so make sure you connect with them. Team 5 is, we lost Alvina there, Carlo, Mariah, I'm sorry, Jason, Carlo, and Mariah, number 5.
Yes, that's right. We're just gonna stick with 3 people, if that's okay.
You wanna stick with it? Perfect. Okay. Claudia, Andrew, we lost Renato, and Christopher, number 6. You want to be in a 4-person group, Andrew? Okay, then I will have to move you to a team of 3 someplace. Guys, based on what your friend mentions, I have to move all of team 6 to someplace then, because I can't leave the team as 2. Okay, is that okay with everyone? I will have to do that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So team 6, Andrew, you want to be on team 2? Okay, I'm going to write that down, Andrew. Is that okay, team 2?
Fine with me.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, Andrew wants to move to team 2 and he is moved. So let me finish. Mahmouda, Barjosa and Rebecca and Brianna, number 7. Is that okay?
Yes.
And then we have Daya, Jahid, Tenzin, and Nafil, number 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, guys, then I have Renat, so we have Claudia and Christopher. Which teams would you like to join? I can move you to either number 5 or some other team.
Whichever team is available is okay with me.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter to me.
Okay, Christopher and Claudia, I will get back to you guys. Okay, let me do some, arrangements, and I will move it. And one team will have to have then 5 people instead of 4. Is that okay, guys? That's the only way we could do it.
Okay.
Okay.
Professor, what about
Yes.
our Globus team? Like, how do we leave?
It's the same. So that means the original team is the same. Let's say, Christopher, you move to team 1. Let's say you're gonna start working with them.
Oh, but how do I leave the Globus team? Or
Oh,